Down the murky steps.
Or it must not fall. Stuff here. And his soul.
Satan.
His immortal soul.
Oh, I could have totally grabbed your foot and scared you.
I would have fell, and then the thing would probably break.
Oh wow, look at all these steps.
This is really deep. Okay, this is at the end.
Okay, this is your official welcome to Crystal Cave. We're on the first level. There are 3 levels throughout the cave. I'll be talking about some of the biology, so of course that means bats, some of the geology, and the history of the cave. Again, my name is Jace, and before we get started I have a couple of things to cover. The first is that I will be turning the lights on in front of us and off behind us, so it's pretty important that we stay together. The next thing is we're really concerned with the conservation of the cave, and we ask that you don't touch the walls. Do your best not to touch the walls or take anything from the cave. We have oils on our skin that if we were to touch the walls, it would turn them black permanently, and it could damage some of the cave formations. Later on, we'll see some examples of what happens when people touch the rocks. So at this time, I'm going to have to ask for a brave volunteer to lead the way down there where my light is shining. I will be following right behind you. So, someone wants to just lead the way?
What's down there? Right, don't touch anything down. Except for the rails. Touch those.
You can walk right through there. If you walk around it twice, you get that buck. If you walk around it once, you might get a good buck. Depends.
Oh, it looks like there's another group here, so my group just want to step back into the opening here and let them pass. They've probably been down here a couple of weeks now.
We watched twice around the pillar.
Oh yeah, Zoe, didn't you have a few more when you came down?
I'm not sure.
Alright, so this is the second level of Crystal Cave. At this point, we're going to talk about the history and how it's discovered. So the story or legend goes that in 1881, there were 2 brothers walking across the field above one day, William and George Vanasse. They were about age 14 and age 16. They spotted a small little critter, maybe a squirrel or a rabbit, dive down into a hole on the surface. Well, as boys will do, they took sticks, started poking in that hole, hoping to scare the little critter out. As you can imagine, that didn't happen. Accidentally, one of the boys dropped a stick, and they heard it clanking and clattering far down into the cave below. They knew there was more. The next day, the boys came back with a long rope and a single kerosene lantern, tied the rope around their waist, and then lowered themselves into the dark opening on the surface. They came down this diagonal structure right here. This is what we call the slide. So, I said it was discovered in 1881, but not much happened here until 1941, when Mary and Henry Freedy purchased the cave. They officially opened it on June 7th, 1942. It was likely that the boys never made it down to the 3rd level down there. They probably only explored around up here because down there was all full of mud and silt that the glaciers deposited when they were melting. So, take a look at this tan rock around you. Does anyone want to guess what it might be? No guesses? So has anyone heard of limestone before?
Yes.
Yeah? Well, this is very similar to limestone, and it's called dolostone or dolomite. It's a sedimentary rock, and it was formed about 485 million years ago. See, at that time, Wisconsin and Minnesota were covered by shallow oceans, and there was all sorts of little critters swimming around in this ocean. And when these critters would die, they'd start to pile up on the bottom and then decay. So their little organic bits of mud-sized material would over time collect, and then after thousands to millions of years, compress and harden into the rock that we see here. So up here, we see a reddish, rusty colored rock. It's reddish, rusty colored rock. Does anyone want to guess what this might be? I heard a whisper.
Iron ore.
Yep, it is iron ore. Mostly varieties called hematite or limonite. Spring Valley, just a mile east of here, was a prominent iron mining industry between 1890 and 1910. Now they didn't take this for several good reasons. The first is that it's a fairly small deposit. By the time they got it down from the ceiling and smelted it together, it would have made them almost no money. The second reason is it's on the ceiling of a cave. Why would we not want to take the ceiling of a cave? Anyone? We'd be standing in the gift shop. It would fall on our heads, and this would no longer be a cave. So I'm pretty glad that they decided not to take this iron ore. And a couple other cool things. Up here, we see this gray vein through the rock. This is called illite. It's really sticky. It's a clay-like material. Ooh, let's see, there's a little bat up there. There's a shadow on it. So this illite material is not really useful on its own, but clays like it are useful for making pottery, cosmetics, so you might be wearing clays on your face right now, or even the glossy covering on magazine paper. Now, a lot of people ask, why do we call Crystal Cave Crystal Cave? Well, for good reason. That's because throughout the dolostone rock, we have deposits of druzy quartz. So that's these shiny crystal-like structures. This is more of a clear quartz, and this is more of a ruby-colored quartz. Throughout the rock, we can find it, glittering. But these are some of the better examples. These are taken from the third level. Wherever there's quartz, we usually also find chert. And there's this gray line right here. This is called chert. A better example is actually right here. Chert. Now you might know it by the name of flint. It's a more common name. Native Americans would have used this for making arrowheads, spear points, digging tools, because it breaks off into really sharp edges. Does anyone know what else we can use flint for? Yes, starting a fire. We can cook our breakfast with flint. So, I forgot to mention that this quartz is almost as hard as a diamond. So we use that on things like sandpapers, drill bits, and saw blades, stuff like that. The last thing I want to talk about in this room is this pillar right here. This is called the Pillar of Good Fortune. Now, local legend says that if you go around the pillar one time, and only one time, in a period of 24 hours, you'll have the best day of your life. You'll have amazing luck. But if you go around it more than one time, you'll have 48 hours of bad luck. Now, this is my first tour of the day, so I'm going to take the luck. I need all the luck I can get. You guys are all welcome to go around the Pillar of Good Fortune. I wouldn't recommend testing it twice, though, because one of our tour guides did that, and he said the muffler of his car fell off later that day.
Oh. Should we go around once?
Does anybody have any questions before we move on down to the third level? Gotcha. All right, so we're going to head on down to the third level. Watch your step, use the handrail, take your time. Watch out for this first step here, kind of surprised people sometimes.
Have fun.
What was the question? When I come out, well, right now they're hibernating, but because it is springtime, they're really anxious to get outside and start eating some bugs. And yesterday when I was down here, there were a few bats that were flying around. But you don't have to worry about it. They're really nice little guys. They're never gonna hurt you. Never gonna touch you when they're flying around either. They know where everything in the cave is. All right, so at this point we're gonna stop for a little bit. Kind of talk about this slide that the Vanasse brothers came down. I don't want to shine you in the face up there, but up there, see this structure here? this is the slide that the Benas brothers came down. You can see why they would have needed the rope, else they would have probably made it down in record time. I wouldn't want to try and do it without a rope. And I can guarantee you that their mothers probably didn't know what they were up to. So, like I said before, they probably never knew that there were any of these cool rooms down here, because this was all full, probably up to here at least, of just glacier, silt, and mud. So the Freedies excavated this in 1941. When the glaciers were melting, about 10 to 12,000 years ago, the water washed through this cave and brought with it a lot of mud. So this running water over here is not natural to Crystal Cave. We cycle it through on a pump to kind of show you guys what it would have been like 10 to 12,000 years ago, and also what a lot of other caves are like. Because Crystal Cave is above the water table, we don't get a lot of running water, but we do have dripping water in some places because, of course, the rain eventually makes it down to this level. All right, lastly, before we move on, there are a couple of low-hanging rocks throughout the cave. We call this one Headache Rock, for obvious reasons. My parents have told me that my head was harder than stone. I tested it last week. It's not true. So just watch your head as we go through some of these lower hanging rocks.
Cool job this would be. Just walking around. Go to
I do the same thing 5, 6 times a day.
My theory is that's why they only hire a short staff. Squeeze by you here. Excuse me. Okay, this small little room that we're in is called Henry's Hollow, fittingly named after Henry Freedy, one of the original cave owners. So, remember where I said this is all full of glacial silt and mud? Well, we're kind of standing on some of that right now. If we were to dig all the mud out of here, the cave floor would look a lot like the cave ceiling, which is not really that easy to walk on. Henry Freedy, along with 6 other gentlemen, came down here with just wheelbarrows, shovels, and pickaxes, and cleared out this entire cave by hand. They did it in less than a year because the cave did open June 7th, 1942. Now let's talk a little bit about how caves are formed. So, this dolostone rock is actually fairly soft rock, and after about thousands to millions of years, it'll dissolve in slightly acidic water. So this acidic water is called carbonic acid, and over time it'll rain, and then the water will pick up carbon dioxide in the soil, making it slightly acidic, and then it'll seep through cracks and crevices in the rocks to dissolve it away. Believe it or not, we're standing in what once was solid rock, and now it's an empty space. The cave itself is about 1 to 1.5 million years old, but the rock itself is 485 million years old. So we actually drink a beverage that has carbonic acid in it. Does anyone know what that might be? Someone's got to guess. Coke. Coke? Yeah, soda pop has carbonic acid in it, carbonated beverage. And interestingly enough, all these holes up here are caused by that carbonic acid. We call these little holes cavities. And the same thing will happen to your teeth if you drink too much soda pop and forget to brush them. And then you'll notice that the cave is still growing. There's carbonic acid dripping from the ceiling right here. This is the water that's slightly acidic. If you get dripped on, it's not going to hurt you. It's called a cave kiss, and that means the cave likes you. Are there any questions before we move on? All right. Welcome to the ballroom. Yeah, this room is called the ballroom. It is the largest room in Crystal Cave. Believe it or not, we've actually had 2 weddings down here. One was in 1942. I don't know much about that one, but the second one was in 1991. There was 85 guests down here. They all had lighted candles, so you can imagine how it would have been glimmering off the rocks. The couple were geologists, so they were very comfortable in this environment. They also had a string quartet playing in that corner. Does anyone want to guess what kind of music they were playing? Well, we say rock music, but we don't know if that's actually the case. The couple was married under this arch right here. I like to joke around and say they were probably a short couple. But the wedding was in July, so there was likely not many extra guests. And by extra guests, I mean, of course, the bats. The bats use this cave only for hibernation. They'll come in here during the winter, and during the summer, they'll fly away and leave. They have a radius of about 200 miles, so they'll come in here, snooze for the winter, take off up to about 200 miles. During the summer, they'll stay in trees and barns, shelter kind of like that. We have 4 types of bats here in Crystal Cave. One, the little brown myotis. Myotis just means bat. This is the most common. We have the northern long-eared myotis, and these two look very similar. The only way to tell them apart is by the ears. This guy has ears almost as big as his head, so I don't know what I would look like with ears as big as my head, but it would be pretty funny. The next most common is the tricolored bat, also known as the eastern pipistrelle, and then lastly we have the big brown bat. And believe it or not, the big brown bat prefers to hibernate in the basement of our gift shop. We have a couple of them down there. But that's okay. We love having them around because they are great house guests. They eat a ton of bugs. Does anyone know how many bugs a bat can eat in one night?
Twice their weight.
Twice their weight? Well, I'm not sure what it weighs out to, but a single bat can eat 3,000 bugs in a single night. This is huge, I think. When I first heard that, I was impressed. Definitely. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is actually kind of sad. Has anyone heard of white nose syndrome before? Well, it's kind of a fungus that grows on the bats' noses and their ears and their wings. And it was discovered 7 years ago in New York State. We don't know what caused it, but we do know that it transfers from bat to bat. Since then, since its discovery, it's been into 19 states and 2 Canadian provinces. It hasn't gotten to Crystal Cave yet. But what it is when the bat goes into hibernate, the fungus starts to grow on their nose and their ears. And then during the winter, they wake up and they start scratching, they get uncomfortable. They have to use all of their body fat to fight off this fungus. Well, they wake up during the middle of the winter, maybe it's January, and they're hungry. They have to go out and try and find food. Well, as you can imagine, there's no bugs in January, so they end up dying. People say, why does this matter to humans? Well, bats actually save us billions of dollars with a B every year on pesticides. If we didn't have these bats eating 3,000 bugs every single night, there'd be a ridiculously larger quantity of bugs, and then we'd have to spray for them. So they save us quite a bit of money. Now, during the summer, when a bat is flying around, his heart is beating at about 200 times a minute. That's a lot more than us. Our heart beats at about 50 to 60 times per minute. But during the winter, when they come in here to snooze, their heart drops to 12 to 15 times per minute. Huge change, and that's how they're able to survive the entire winter just off their body fat. They also only breathe once every 4 to 5 minutes, so super slow. We actually have a couple of bats still in here. A couple of them up there. Those are the little brown bats. A couple of them up there. A couple of them over there. So every year in the spring, the bats will have one pup. And it takes a couple of weeks before they're able to fly on their own and find their own food. Then the cycle repeats in the fall. They'll come in here and snooze. They're very clean creatures. They're very docile. They're never going to harm anything. And a single bat can live up to 30 years. Has anyone ever heard the term blind as a bat before? Well, that's actually not true. There are over 1,000 species of bats in the world, and they all have excellent eyesight. The term probably came from the trait that they evolved called echolocation, and then that's what allows them to know where everything is in the dark. So if I were to pluck one of these crazy long hairs out the back of my head and hold it up here, none of us would probably be able to see it. But the bats for sure could, because they let out this supersonic screech that we can't hear with our ears. It bounces off objects and comes back to them. That's how they know exactly where the mosquitoes are, the moths are, in the dead of night. So if I were to turn all the lights off in here, a bat were to fly around, he would know where all of us are, and he would never touch any of us. Are there any questions? So if someone ever calls you, oh, there's one right there, flying around. So if anyone ever calls you blind as a bat, just smile and say thank you. Because you just got a weird bat compliment. Alright, at this time we're going to move on. I'm going to remind you not to touch anything because now we're going to see on the left of this next passageway, the first is our cave formations. And if we were to touch one of these formations, it would stop it from growing for almost 1,000 years. So, if I get a brave volunteer to lead the way down there, down this hallway, and stop where there's a wooden barricade.
Hey, Devin.
Just a leg lights.
Ted,
Yeah.
it's like pudding. Like
Oh yeah, gross.
pudding.
What do you mean?
I'm gonna remind you, just because you have a video camera, just make sure you're aware, because when you're not like staring at the screen.
Oh, I know,
so
I
you don't,
know,
like,
I know.
bonk your head on something.
I think we're getting close to that thing. We're going to be changing that one.
Side note: if you're over 6 foot, this is small.
It's the powdered chocolate. That's how it's formed.
Oh, that's crazy. That. It's like milk.
I'm gonna come up in here with the lights. Okay. Now, remember when I said, whoa, there's a bat right there. Remember when I said that the first tour started in 1942? Well, up until 1957. Yeah, see, when I first started flying, I was kind of surprised, and now I'm kind of getting used to it. So, when the cave was first discovered, or when the cave tours first started opening in 1942, the cave tour stopped right here. It wasn't until 1957 when Mary Freedy was giving a tour where she felt a small breeze on the back of her neck. And being an amateur geologist, she knew breeze meant there must have been another passage. So she came back later, after her tour, and dug a small little opening, about this size, and crawled into this room in 1957. That's why we call this room Mary's Maze. Now you guys, who noticed that they walked up a ramp on their way in, into this room? Well, this right here is actually the lowest spot in Crystal Cave. Does anyone know how far below the surface we are right now? Anyone know? Or want to guess? 40 feet. Double, almost. We're 72 feet, or 7 stories below the surface. So this room was discovered in 1957. There have been other notable discoveries since, and that is back here. This is what we call the Bat Cave. This was discovered in 1991. We were pretty stoked about this one because this discovery added on 2,500 feet to Crystal Cave, officially making it the longest cave in Wisconsin. So we don't take tours back here for a couple of reasons. One is that it's super muddy. It gets even muddier than this after a little ways. The next reason is that after about 15 yards, it turns into the little crawl space that Mary had to come through like that. So unless you want to crawl through 2,000 feet of mud, then, I mean, it might not be your cup of tea. I think at some point they do take all the tour guides back there, and I'm kind of excited about that. So, you may have noticed some of these cracks on the ceiling. There's large cracks throughout the cave. These cracks are called joints. And this is where that carbonic acid percolates down through the rocks. So it'll rain, and it takes about 3 weeks for the water to get down to this level in the cave. So if it's pouring out, we don't really notice the difference. Maybe it picks up a little bit, but 3 weeks later, but not much at all. So 3 weeks later, the carbonic acid percolating through the rocks dissolves some of the dolostone and picks up in the rock a mineral called calcite. Now when it reaches these open spaces, it starts to drip from the ceiling. And this calcite is redeposited on the ceiling or on the floor, and it makes speleothems, or fancy term for cave formation. So these are stalactites beginning to form here. Down here are what we call stalagmites. So those are those bumps. You can differentiate between the two because stalactites hang tight to the ceiling. Stalagmites might grow up or they might get stepped on. One of my favorite examples of cave formations is right here. It looks like melted ice cream. It's called flowstone, and that's just when the calcite runs down the side of the wall and builds up thick sheets. So when a stalactite and a stalagmite grow together, it forms what is called a column. And as we go into the next room, we're going to see some pretty good examples of cave formations. Are there any questions? All right, we're going to move on then. We're going to lead the way all the way down to the next room. We'll follow you. Watch ahead of some of these lower rocks.
Look at this is coming through the hood.
All right, being in this room, does anybody feel colder? No? Well, that's a trick question. A lot of people say yes. It's actually not true. This room is the same temperature as the entire cave, 48 degrees. And I know it's 48 degrees because it's always 48 degrees, whether it's 100 degrees outside or minus 20 outside. Now you can start to understand why the bats might like to come in here and sleep for the winter, quite a bit warmer than the cold Wisconsin winter. So it stays 48 degrees because this, for one, this rock is resistant to change. And the second reason is that is the average yearly temperature. So if we were to take all the temperatures of every single day, add them up, and then divide by 365, we'd get pretty much 48 degrees on the dot. So if we go maybe a couple hours south of here to Cave of the Mounds, that's about 52 degrees. So just that short distance makes the average yearly temperature increase. If we were to go even further south, to Kentucky maybe, it would be 65 degrees in their caves. And then if we were to go down to Texas, it would be 70 degrees all year round. Even though it's not colder in here, we do like to joke around and say, the cave has goosebumps. That's why we call it. Oh yeah, there's some bats up there. Pretty soon they'll probably wake up. It takes about a half an hour for a bat to fully wake up and be aware of what's going on. So kind of like me when I wake up in the morning. All right, I have one last question for you. If there was a tornado above us today, do you think we'd be okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an excellent guess. Some people say yeah, some people say no. Well, they tell you to go to your basement in case of tornado. Well, being 7 stories below that basement, I think we'd be okay. I would be surprised if we even knew that there was a tornado at all. Alright, a lot of people have questions about what's back there. Well, we used to take tours back there, but it's kind of a tight space, it's hard to navigate, and there's lots of cave formations that people were getting the right idea to like snap off a speleothem and put it in their pocket. So we're really trying to conserve the cave. Back there, really the same thing as this room, really similar. Nothing extra special. But some people have questions about that. So if some of my buddies and I were trying to crawl through the bat cave and it through all that mud, we might start to get cold. Then we'd have to start worrying about hypothermia. Do you guys know what hypothermia is? Have heard of it maybe? Well, hypothermia is when your body temperature starts to drop then you get confused and you don't know what's going on, and it can be really dangerous. But thankfully, we're only down here for an hour, so we don't have to worry about hypothermia. All right, this is a dead end, so we're going to have to backtrack a little ways. But before we do, is there any questions that I can answer? All right. On either side, you might notice some of the pools of the carbonic acid. Such as in there's a pool of carbonic acid. And down there. Come into this room, it's going to kind of creep up.
Good spot right here.
So back in the bat cave, there is another exit after about 2,000 feet crawl space. So that exit and then the slide that the brothers came in, those are the two ways the bats get in and out of this cave. Alright, so everyone wants to follow me this way.
Don't look at it. She seems to be enjoying it more than I thought she would. I need to feel it for her.
Back around.
Is that everyone? So,
Brandon,
sorry about that. Okay, we call this room the ghost room or the goblin room. Well, that's not because there's any real ghosts down here, but we have what it used to be called the Ghost of Crystal Cave. And people on that side, you might have to step a little bit closer to see this. 2 eyes and a mouth saying, boo. Well, believe it or not, in 1942, that face right there was actually the main attraction to Crystal Cave. Now, Henry Freedy was a savvy businessman, and he had roots in marketing, so he took a black and white photo of this face, stuck it on a business card, and mailed it all across the United States. And people actually came from all around, 7 flights below the ground, just to see this rock here. Well, now we think it's just kind of a rock. But there are actually a few cool formations in here. For example, all these different layers here. This represents different layers of time, as the sediments on the bottom of the ocean or near the shore of the ocean would have built up, and geologists can detect weather patterns and climate changes and droughts just in the different rock layers. The other cool thing is, oh yeah, good eye, there's a bat there. Well, right next to that bat, there are these little bumpy things in the rock right there. They're called trace fossils. So about 400 million years ago, when this was all just mud, there was worms kind of crawling through the mud, eating the organic material, and they left a pathway behind them. That pathway is still in the rock today, and we can see it fossilized. A trace fossil like this can be comparable to a dinosaur footprint, where it shows where the animal or organism was, but not the actual organism. Okay, there are 3 things required for a cave to be called a cave. The first, it has to be explorable by people. And we're down here, so I think we meet that requirement. The second one has to be naturally forming. So you can't go home, dig a hole in your backyard, jump in and say, hey mom, look, I made a cave. That doesn't work. So that means the mine shafts don't count as caves. The last thing, it has to have absence of all natural light. This occurs in 2 places naturally, the bottom of the ocean and in caves. Would you guys like to experience the absence of natural light?
Sure.
All right, I'm gonna just stay put quick here. I'm gonna hit the lights. Ooh. All right, everyone ready? Ready. Wave your hand in front of your face, see if you can see anything.
No.
Man over there with the video camera, you might be able to see your
I
hand.
can.
There are a couple of myths surrounding darkness like this. One is that you'll go crazy if you stay down here too long. Well, we know that's not true because there are a lot of blind people in the world and they're not all going crazy. The other myth is that if we stay down here for too long, we'll go blind. We know that's not true as well because there's a lot of scientific evidence that proves it. If we were to stay down here for a long time, we would be very sensitive, but our eyes would eventually work just fine. So imagine you're one of the Vanas brothers, right? You come down here, all you have is a kerosene lantern. You don't know what's down here. You don't know your way around. Would you guys be brave enough to come down?
Yeah.
Yeah? I thought I would be at first, but then I reconsidered that what happens if I move my lantern just a little too quick? Now would I be brave enough? I'm not sure. Alright, before we move on, I'm going to tell you that the next passage is kind of dim until we get to the next room. So just kind of watch your head and be careful. We're going to be heading this way. I'll kind of go up ahead and hit the light for us. Okay, this is what we call the fossil room. So if you remember, I said at one point in time, Wisconsin and Minnesota were covered by shallow oceans. Well, during this time period, about 488 to 444 million years ago, was called the Ordovician period. There were several creatures swimming around in this ocean. The first big guy here, the cephalopod. Basically like a giant squid, except he swims backwards this way. Cephala means head, pod means foot, so his name literally means head foot. That's because his head are kind of close to his feet. So, these guys were the head honchos of the ocean back then. They could grow almost as long as, or over the length of this wooden board stretched out, 10 to 15 feet. As they grew, they added layers onto their shell. So we have an example of a cephalopod fossil right here. And you can kind of see the layers in the shell right here. As he grew, he would have added another layer onto his shell. This fossil was taken from River Falls, Wisconsin, so very close to here. The next little critter was this gastropod. Looks kind of like a snail. That's pretty much because he is a snail. Gastro means stomach, pod means foot, so his name means stomach foot. We have the gastropods are the most abundant fossil in Crystal Cave. And we have a couple examples. One is right here. You can see it in the rock right here. If everyone wants to come a little bit closer. Right there. You see the spiral in the rock there? It's a gastropod fossil.
Was that one actually found in the cave? It's
Yep, that's natural in the cave. Another natural one in the cave. Up here, if anyone can see it, I'm not sure. Right where my finger is, there it looks like a snail. It was embedded in the ceiling there. So, the next little guy we talk about is the crinoid. Looks like a plant, it's actually an animal. So this is a crinoid here. It would root itself in the bottom of the ocean, and it would collect plankton and little small organisms and eat them. Well, when they died, their stems would fall to the ocean floor and kind of break apart. When we have an example of crinoid fossils here, and that's right here. You can kind of see the spaghettio patterns, or the Cheerios in the rocks there. Those are crinoid stems. And right where my thumb is here, that's intact crinoid stem, and that's pretty rare because usually they break apart. Native Americans would actually take these little spaghettios out of the rocks to make necklaces and bracelets and things like that. They'd use them as beads. The last little guy here, this is the Wisconsin state fossil, and it's called the trilobite. It consists of 3 segments: the head, the body, and the tail. They were the main prey for these big guys right here. These were the most abundant creatures during the Ordovician period, and they can be found on every single continent today. Now this guy here was taken from Morocco, so West Africa, because it's a little bit bigger, the ones we have around here are only about a ½ inch big, so teeny tiny. The biggest one I ever discovered though was 3 feet long and 2 feet wide. So you can imagine just a 3-foot cockroach scuttling across the bottom of the ocean. And that's what those guys do. Any questions about fossils? Okay, we're gonna carry on here.
Brian, was that you?
This is a great
Is
time.
that you?
Yes.
Devin.
Great time.
Kids. Get a can and they go what then? Girls.
Nothing else really comes to mind except for that. I'm not exactly sure why. No, not even spiders. Because I think it's just because there is absolutely no light down here, and even rats kind of need a little bit of light. The bats, because of their echolocation, can find their way. Even though they have eyesight that helps them out, but the echolocation is what really helps them navigate and catch darkness. So this is the room called Trails at End, and in this room there are a couple of cool cave formations that we haven't talked about yet. The first one up here is called Cave Drapery. You can see why it's called Cave Drapery, because it looks like a curtain or a drape hanging over the side. And if anybody ever remembers anything about this tour, it's usually the next formation here. That's this one right here. It's kind of like a breakfast food. Does anyone want to take a gander at what this might be called? Yeah. Yep. This is, no kidding, cave bacon. And another cool formation up here. These are these hollow things up here. They look like stalactites. They act like stalactites, but they're actually hollow, and they're called soda straws. So as they grow, the calcite comes down through the middle, reinforces the outside, and they'll just grow the same length until eventually maybe they'll plug up, and then they turn into stalactites, and they might get a little bit thicker. But the longest stalactite ever found is 23 feet long, and it's in Arizona. Usually they break off under their own weight because they're so skinny, at about 3 to 4 feet. The last crazy thing in here, and maybe not everyone can see this, but up here there's kind of like claw structures. They look like they're kind of clawing up towards the roof of the cave. These are called halectites, and this is the biggest mystery of caves. There's one right there. That's the biggest mystery of caves because geologists actually don't know how they're formed. Some say maybe it could be the breeze in the cave, but we have no breeze in here. So that's still the big mystery. It's pretty exciting. We don't know how they're formed. They kind of defy gravity a little bit. Any questions about cave formations? All right, so the next room.
Go ahead.
I'm coming. I just want to get a good video for everybody and post it on YouTube. So everybody can see the Crystal Cave tour. Sweetheart.
Okay, well this room is called Mother Hubbard's Cupboard. It's pretty fun to say, but we call it Mother Hubbard's Cupboard because up here it looks like shelves. There's no bone up there, I've checked. So you guys remember about 10 to 12,000 years ago, or I said about 10 to 12,000 years ago, there was a lot of water running through this cave? Well, we tell a famous story about a caveman named Charlie who lived down here. So 10 to 12,000 years ago, Charlie and his buddies came down here with boats, and they would have boat races. Well, Charlie not a very good boat racer. He always lost. Until one day, he came up with a new invention, and then he never lost another boat race. But one time he was in a race and he lost control of his boat. He was going way too fast. He crashed, lost control of his boat, crashed into the wall right there, and left that big indent. Well, he was going so fast that his boat kind of got scattered throughout the room. And over here, you can kind of see Charlie's invention, known as the first outboard motor. Charlie's propeller went flying into the wall right there, which left this hole. And, as you can imagine, Charlie was just about as lucky as his boat, and his face can be seen in the rock right here. 2 eyes, nose, and a mouth right there. Well, people ask, where are Charlie's teeth? It's because Charlie's teeth are right here in the rock. And this is actually pretty cool. This is a crystal quartz, or a druzy quartz geode, and it's what Crystal Cave is named after. So if you want to come this way, you might have to see the teeth right in here. Then lastly, over here is Charlie's handprint. Well, you can see in the rock here that it's kind of black, or it is black. And that's because we used to let people put their hands there to try and see, is my hand the same size as Charlie's? Well, what happened is the oils on their skin affected the rock, they oxidized, and it damages the rock. So you can see an example of what happens when you touch the rock. It permanently turns it black and damages the cave. That's all. So we use that to illustrate why we tell you not to touch the rock. I'll let you guys decide if that story is really true or not. And then lastly, we have one more room to check out on the tour. It's back up on the 2nd level. And again, I'm going to remind you not to touch anything or take anything from the wall, especially take anything. You'll know what I mean when we get there. This is Headache Rock again, so watch ahead. Alright, so excuse me here. Alright, we can head back up to the 2nd level. What's that? The 2nd? Well, actually, my group wants to kind of huddle in the corner there. We got another group coming down.
That's not scary. No more farting in the cave. There is no wind here in this cave. No, nothing to blow it away. Oh boy. Way up there. We're safe in here.
Alright, my group, if you want to follow me up now.
Just a little bit so you can get a better view. So right there is perfectly fine. So as you can see, right over here, there's a little bit of water that is dripping down the cave. That is to show what it would look like a really long time ago when there was
What's going on there, buddy?
area.
Be right in.
And
Exercising.
Yeah.
No, I don't think I would either. So, that slide, they did not get to the area that we are right now because of,
Coin room.
Actually, the last time I came here,
Oh, wow.
there was like 4 bats hanging out there.
Yeah. Well, you guys have already obviously noticed there is money everywhere, all over the walls. Well, we very recently actually made the policy change to not allow people to put money on the walls. We used to let people come in here. This was the last room. We call it the wish room. You can put a coin on the wall and make a wish. We do believe, though, that there's plenty of luck stored up in these coins, that if you still want to make a wish, close your eyes, and I'll bet it'll come true, especially if you walk around the pillar. Well, you can see, though, that right here where the coins are kind of in the rock there, and then just look for any coin, really. It's kind of dug out its own little hole. That's because when the coin oxidizes, it eats away at the rock and damages it. So that's why we kind of don't practice that anymore. But an interesting feature, you can check it out up there, there are coins on the ceiling. There's also some coins in this sticky, ill-like clay here. Well, believe it or not, in the 40s and 50s, we had a ladder in here. We let people climb up to the ceiling, stick a coin in the top, make a wish. Well, insurance companies caught wind of that one, made us take it out real quick. But there are some cool things in this room to look at still. And if everyone wants to step a little closer, I'll show you some properties of fluorescence and phosphorescence. So basically, this thing right here is just a fancy black light, a super powerful black light. The UV rays are a lot stronger, and you wouldn't want to look at it, like look into it or shine it on your skin for too long, because it is UV rays. All right, everybody ready? So this green rock here, this is quartz. This is what Charlie's teeth are made of, and it's how Crystal Cave got its name. Up here, if anyone's born in October, you might be sort of biased to this stone because it's called opalite. Very close to the birthstone in October, which is opal. Down here, this purple rock is called hydrozincite. Up here, this is wernerite. And it has no real economic value, but it glows cool under a black light, so we brought it down. Down here, willemite. Ooh, and then down here, these are both willemite as well. The green is zinc in the rock there. Now this purple rock, orange rock, and this greenish purple one up here, those are all calcite. This is what the cave formations are made of. The speleothems, this is what the cave bacon is made of. I'm getting cold too. So this purple rock here and this orange rock up here, those are called fluorite. Now I hope everyone has used fluorite already today, because fluorite is used to make fluoride, which is used in toothpaste and mouthwash. Right here is slag, and it's a byproduct of making steel, so that's man-made. And then this one in the bag, this one's interesting. Does anyone want to guess what this might be? I'll give you a hint. It's found on kitchen tables.
Credit.
Nope. You put it on your food, maybe?
Calcium. Salt.
Salt, yeah. Halite is actually salt. We have it in the bag because the humidity in the cave would cause it to melt away. But this is the geological term for salt, is halite. So next time you're at the dinner table, ask somebody to pass the halite. Up here, franklinite. This one's my favorite. It's super rare. It's only found in one place on the entire planet. It is Franklin, New Jersey. When I turn the lights on in just a second, check it out, you'll notice that it looks way different under normal white light. So those are all fluorescent properties, where they glow under a UV light. Now I'll show you phosphorescent properties, where it can glow on its own if I charge it up. So I'm going to place the black light here, or the UV light, on this purple calcite, and when I take it away, it'll glow on its own. Everybody ready?
Yep.
Now, because there's calcite in the rocks, and there's quartz in the Yellowstone rock, if I put the UV light here, do you think It'll glow on its own, the cave itself.
Yes.
Yes.
Let's find out. So I think anywhere in the cave would glow like that if we put the UV light on it. Now look at the Franklinite. It looks totally different than what it looked like with the UV light on there. Looks normal, like a normal rock. Okay, at this point we're going to start heading back up to the surface. Does anybody have any last minute questions?
I found a coin on the ground.
Ooh. Oh yeah,
What'd you see?
there's a coin on the ground.
Coin.
Jay's coming up from the witch room.
I was gonna say flint is also used in firearms, right?
Yep. I'm not sure if it's used. It probably is used in modern gunpowder, but in the flintlock pistols they use it to make the spark on the hammer.
Mm-hmm.
All right. As we come back under this rock here, watch your head.
I was trying to see if I could see some dates on these coins.
Yeah.
You know, like see if there's some really old ones. Oh, look right here, look at this. Look at that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
A whole bunch of them right there.
I remember the last time I was in here. Right here. That's in here.
Okay.
Don't go around that rock.
I'm not. I'm the one driving.
Bad luck.
Alright, well thanks for coming to Crystal Cave, guys. I know I had a good time. I hope you did too. The one last thing we need to check out before we leave is the slide. So on your way out, look to your right and you'll see the hole that the Benas brothers came down. We have it mostly boarded up right now, but we do have enough space for the bats to get in and out. You'll also see remnants of an old rail system. So Henry Freedy had a rail cart on there, and that's how they used to cart all their glacial sediment out of the cave.
Well, it's a good thing I went on that 2 mile
If
bike
you have
ride
anything in the
before we
lockers,
started
you
this
can
tour.
grab those. Otherwise, feel free to head on up from the gift shop. Thank you.
Let's start to walk up.
Thank you
Yeah.
for an excellent tour, man.
You're welcome. Thank you for the compliment.
Welcome.